Today on Locked On Canadiens, the Canadiens sign Otto Leskinen. That's a name we haven't heard in a bit. What do the Laval Rocket need to do in order to win their Game 7 against the Springfield Thunderbirds? And finally, how great or how not great is the Montreal Canadiens rebuild going? We talked to some people who have a little bit of FOMO in comparison to Canadiens fans, and that's all coming up on today's Locked On Canadiens.
Your Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 637 of Locked On Canadiens. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, so please subscribe. Tell your friends. Let's become the first listen of everybody's day, not just your day. And at some point, I have to say I'm filled with so much affection for all of our listeners. You've been so great interacting with us, and we're so happy. But in the meantime, we have so much to talk about today, but I will promise that we have 2 episodes on Cayden Primeau coming up in the next couple of weeks because we listen to you, we love you, and we know that you're all really hyped up about Cayden Primeau, so we're going to talk to some people who get to watch him a lot. In the meantime, let's get down to business for today. My name is Laura Sab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize. And Scott, it seems like even though I'm hosting, a lot of the stuff we're talking about today is your baby.
I was going to say they saw that we had a day off because we recorded a double episode on Sunday and went, okay, well, Scott has to talk more now. And I'm not opposed to, what they did today. And I know we're going to talk about the Rocket in a little bit, and I'm always prepared to talk about them. But they brought back a Finnish defenseman that we were not expecting. We weren't expecting anything. And when the news came out that they had re-signed Otto Leskinen, I was checking the Eyes on the Prize Slack as I do at work instead of doing my job sometimes. If my bosses are listening to this, no, I work very hard. But the tweet came up and we thought, oh, are we flashing back? Are we remembering a couple of days ago kind of thing? And no, as it turns out, Otto Leskinen back on a 1-year, 2-way contract, $300,000 in the AHL guaranteed.
I like how Maple was calling you out as you were saying that because Maple knows what's up. And for those of you listening, Maple is Scott and Carly's dog. So Otto Leskinen, that was like I said, that's a name we haven't heard in a while. So much so that both of us, when we saw that, we thought that somebody was just recycling an old tweet, as in the offseason, some Canadiens fans and media like to do. And it's interesting because you know what that says to me is that the Canadiens feel that there are some people in Laval right now that might not be there anymore. There's some people that they're prepared to graduate to the next level. And so it is a 1-year contract. It's not something that's necessarily, world changing or anything like that. But I like the message that it's sending. And for me, we talk a lot on this podcast about who's going to be on the team next year, who's going to take the step from the Rocket to the Habs. I think they have a plan in place because at the same time, it's not a huge deal, but it sends a big message. Everything that they're doing right now gets scrutinized by people like us, as well as the entire fan base. We're trying to figure out, what direction are they going in? What's the plan? And we are going to talk a little bit later in the show about how the rebuild is going and how we feel about it. But I think it just, they're doing sensible things is the thing. Is that, some days they change the world, they hire Marie-Philippe Poulin, and then some days they just do something that makes sense.
And I look at this as, and I believe it was Rock Smash on Twitter asked if this is a move for the Rocket only. And I think this is insurance as on that bottom pair there. I think that Leskinen is a good person to push Chris Weidman in that in a sheltered role. I think they can play the same spot, be a power play 2 quarterback, would be very good in the AHL. Leskinen's been an efficient distributor from the back end here. And this to me is a lot of insurance because I assume a guy like Sami Niku is going to get some offers in the offseason. I don't know if he'll be back. I would like Sami Niku to be back because I like a lot of what he brings to the table. But you don't have guarantees that Louis Belpedio will be back. and that Xavier Ouellet will be back, the team captain in Laval, and that you're going to need people there to insulate the younger guys, because you got to assume any number of Barron, Barron, Gooley, Jack-Eye, and Norlinder, et cetera, will be starting in the AHL or playing there at some point, and you can't just have all kids all the time. That sounds great in a perfect world, but it is not. You need veterans to step in and play if the kids need a break in this. And in 2 seasons with the Rocket, he put up 22 points in 52 games and 17 points in 33 games during that COVID-shortened Canadian-only division. Wait. No, that was the season that got cut short because of the pandemic, and next year he had gone back to Finland after that, I believe. Nope, I have it right. They have added another year on to elite prospects here for next season. He went to the KHL, and obviously he went back to Finland. He went back to Liga after after 35 games, where he produced very well at the KHL level. It's, if you're upset about a deal like this, I don't know what to tell you. It's not a game-breaking kind of thing. It's just smart, simple business. They still had his rights, and clearly Hughes and Gorton saw something that they liked, or their scouts liked what they saw from Leskinen still playing over in Europe, and thought it might be time to bring him back. He's only 25. He's not out of his prime, and he never really got he only has 6 NHL games under his belt. It's an opportunity to prove that he can either make the NHL or he becomes that, quadruple A type player, like a Charles Hudon, but on defense when they need him to. It's just nice, simple business here. Nothing to be, too freaked out about, but it was surprising nonetheless to see he was the name that came back in terms of deals.
I agree. And speaking of the Rocket, they do have a huge Game 7 tonight when you're listening to this on Wednesday evening. We're going to talk about the keys to this series, and that's all coming up in just one moment. But first, RockAuto.com is the only place you should be looking for all your car parts and accessories. I myself have had a little bit of car trouble. My car's getting a little bit older. It's now hit the 12-year mark, and things are starting to go wrong with the car, as they do. And what happens each time is that I'll go and I'll get a quote for a piece of, or for a part, of the car, and I will look it up on RockAuto just for fun. I'll go get it from a chain store, and then I'll look it up on RockAuto, and RockAuto is consistently much cheaper. In one case, it was a quarter of the price. In most cases, it's half or third of the price. They're so reliably affordable, and it's such an easy to use catalog. All you have to do is go to rockauto.com. You put in your car's make, model, and year, and as I said, my car's 12 years old, right? It's not new, but you can find everything that you need on there. And honestly, every single time the price has been so much lower. It's just so much more convenient as well, because you can order it and it gets delivered directly to your door. I go to chain stores only for the fun of it now, because it makes absolutely no sense for me to get car parts and accessories anywhere other than RockAuto. And it blows my mind just how convenient, how affordable, and just how much inventory and stock they have on there. You can just choose your own price. All you do is use their drop down catalog. And if you want, like me, to have your mind blown by how much more affordable things are on rockauto.com, you can go to rockauto.com, and do not forget to write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" box, so that they'll know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So, the Laval Rocket in a Game 7 against the Springfield Thunderbirds, who are rapidly becoming a team I am strongly disliking. Cayden Primeau had an amazing game on, I believe it was Sunday evening at this point, or Monday evening.
Monday night.
Monday night, exactly. It was Cayden Primeau having another really good game. The Laval Rocket were able to push the series to Game 7. It's on the road, not back in Laval. What do you think the keys are for them to win this series and make the Calder Cup finals?
I'm glad you mentioned Cayden Primeau right off the bat here, because I'm looking at his stats on the AHL site right now. He's played 13 games because he did not start the Syracuse series. They went to Kevin Poulin to start that series, which was the right call at the time. And since then, Cayden Primeau has gone 9-4 or 9-4. They don't count overtime losses like they would in the regular season, so they are rolled into his regular losses. 2.10 goals against and a 937 save percentage. He put up a 968. He only allowed 1 goal on 31 shots last night, Monday night, when by the time you're listening to this, and he's been nothing short of incredible. He's the most used goalie in the playoffs so far. Dustin Wolf will play his 13th game tonight when Stockton takes on Chicago, and he's near the top for almost everything. Goals against in terms of people who have played more than a handful of games. The only people ahead of him are Alex Lyon and Joel Hofer, and Hofer splits the net with Charlie Lindgren. And Cayden Primeau is the key to the Rocket. If he continues to be this solid, and the penalty kill, which has not allowed a goal in this series, despite the officiating's best efforts, the penalty kill has been incredible. They have shut out the Thunderbirds. Cayden Primeau has been lights out. And then in Game 5, they needed someone to step up. They played with 11 forwards, lost Jesse Ylonen early on when he was hit from behind, and it was uncalled. He will not play Wednesday night. And it is very obvious that Joel Bouchard, wow, there's a JF Houle is bringing in an offensive talent. I know a lot of fans are clamoring for Joshua Waugh. I have a feeling it will be him. I think they're going to give him a shot on that line where Ylonen was playing and try to get him on the score sheet here. It makes the most sense to do that. But the Rocket, Donick Martel had a 3-point game. Brandon Gignac had a couple of big points. They needed a hero in that game, and I said it in the Eyes on the Prize Slack. I'm like, they're holding on. They need a hero here. And Gabriel Bourque came up and stepped up again. Donick Martel stepped up again. Brandon Gignac stepped up again. They're doing really impressive things here. And Martel, we look at his 4-goal game against Rochester, and everyone kind of thinks that's all he's done. He's, I believe, second or third in playoff scoring. He's been incredible, despite leading the AHL in penalty minutes in the postseason. Some his fault, some maybe not so much. It's going to be tight, and I don't know which way it's going to go because no team has won multiple games in a row in this series, and the Rocket are banged up. Like, they really, truly are, but at the same time, they won't go away. Even when they lose, they are there tooth and nail every step of the way, and it's tough to play against. I know it's cliche, but they are a hard team to play against when they are just relentless on everything all the time. And win or lose, this was a team that was almost eliminated with 38 seconds left in round 1, and they are 1 game away from the Calder Cup final. What they've done is impressive, like truly impressive this offseason.
It's incredible, and I don't want to jinx it because I want to wait until however long their run goes before we do a nice postmortem on how they've just been so resilient, so, I want to say, so forceful. Forceful is not the right word, like commanding, right? Like, they're constantly there. They're constantly trying to take control of the game, even against teams like Springfield. And I got to say, I'm starting to get a little bit sick of all the Laval Rocket skill players that are the future hopes of the Montreal Canadiens getting injured and nothing being done about it. It's starting to get a little bit egregious, like it's not like the Laval Rocket have that much like ultra elite skill there. They do have skill players. They are scoring by committee. They're all stepping up in different ways. And I will say that, I will give them that, but I'm getting like really, really tired of this mess that literally, I can see that it's going uncalled. I can see nothing's being done about it. And I can draw a line between that and then the next time a Laval Rocket player gets hurt.
And the thing is, it's not just little things, because the Rocket are being called for, they're calling it tight, every little ticky-tack stick infraction or a hold or whatever gets called. But I watched Dakota Joshua like jump through Cayden Primeau and nothing happens. They run into him over and over. And it doesn't go unnoticed. And a lot of, and even, neutral fans are looking at this and going, what in the hell is going on in this series right now? And the officiating is not why this is a 7-game series. Springfield is a good team. They are built for the playoffs. They are a mean and nasty team with good goaltending and solid veteran leadership. They just, it's unbalanced. But the Rocket are finding a way to persevere through that. And they have one more, hill in this. And then beyond that, Chicago and Stockton are very good teams if they get that far. They're battle tested. They're beat up. Make no mistake. This team's far from 100%. Nate Schnarr's not playing. Cedric Paquette's likely playing injured. Gabriel Bork is likely playing injured. Jesse Alonen is out. They're a beat-up team, but they're finding ways to win, and that's the hallmark of a good team here. There's a lot of guys that I would like to see back next season just because, they're integral parts of this team. Alex Belzile, Donick Martel are key guys to this franchise right now, and I think it's worth keeping them around for next year. I don't know how Game 7 is going to go. I'm not going to make predictions on it because this entire series has been a coin flip. Obviously, when we get into our next episode, we will have the recap on that, whether they win or lose. Hopefully it is a win because we will be very joyous over that. The Habs haven't had a team in the Calder Cup final since
the Hamilton Bulldogs back in 2011, 2010?
Was it 2011 or 2010? I can't remember, but yeah, it's been a long, long time since they've been in this position to actually, to make a statement like this. And let's see what they do.
Exactly. And so that game is tonight, so we'll obviously be talking about it on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, what we're going to do for the rest of this episode is we talked about the Canadiens rebuild with our friends Russ and Rachel from Locked On Flyers, and it wasn't part of the prospect talk, so we left it separate, but we thought it would be fun to kind of give you guys that segment that we did together where we compared rebuilds, and there might have been a little bit of FOMO on the part of Russ and Rachel, and all that's coming up in just one moment. But first, Built Bar has come up with yet another flavor. And this time it is mud pie. If you don't know Built Bar, it's a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. And if you don't know what a mud pie tastes like, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new Mud Pie Bar is rich whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. Now, all our friends across the Locked On NHL network are getting their samples, and they are all talking about how they're to die for, and they're devouring them right away because they taste like a treat. But at the same time, they're all really high in protein, they're really low in sugar, they're made with real chocolate, and they're so, so tasty. So if you want to try these Built Bars, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's Built.com, and the promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off your order.
So one of the interesting, I think, contrasts between the Philadelphia Flyers and Montreal Canadiens is this idea that the Canadiens are embracing a rebuild right now in a really comprehensive way. They traded away a lot of people at trade deadline and over the course of the last year or so to kind of set themselves up properly for this rebuild. They fired the entire management team, have like a new management team in place, whereas the Flyers are in this weird gray area that they're calling an aggressive retool. That Chuck Fletcher is still there as the GM. They are dealing with what I think will be either the fifth or sixth coach in the last 5 or 6 years. It's kind of a mess, to understate it just a little bit. And to have the Habs, who went from an improbable Stanley Cup final, but a Stanley Cup final nonetheless, straight into this kind of rebuild mode is an unusual thing, but they seem to be doing things in a very logical, progressed way, as opposed to the Flyers, who are just kind of scrambling. And so I guess I want to hear, what's a properly done rebuild look like?
I think the advantage that this incoming management team is that they're brand new, right? It's kind of like the time that you're the most popular as the new GM is when you've first been appointed. And I think the Canadiens so far, the steps that they've taken, both in terms of hiring as well as in terms of trades or, their messaging that's going out to the fandom, has been really, really positive. As a Canadiens fan, I have to say that I personally feel really confident in the direction the team is going, but they haven't had a chance to make big mistakes yet, right? That we have to remember that. I do think, though, that the fact that you kind of have to embrace it, because because for many years we heard in Montreal through mediocrity, we kept hearing that the Montreal market will never embrace a rebuild. But they finally got to a point where, making they would make the playoffs, and then they would go on improbable runs in the playoffs. This is not the first time it happens. It's the first time we get all the way to a Stanley Cup final in this market. But you talk about like the times that they've gone to the Eastern Conference final in the past. One of them was against the Flyers. Like those were all improbable. And it's like, it is true that anything can happen when you make the playoffs, but that shouldn't be your strategy, right? Like your strategy is to build a deep team that can constantly be relied upon to play well. And I think the messaging that's coming from this team, like Kent Hughes is an unproven GM, obviously. He has absolutely no experience in the league. But then you can look at Jeff Gorton's decisions in Boston and in New York, and there are a lot of them that are very, very positive. I think what the Canadiens have been able to do is kind of sell a philosophy up and down the management team, and they're selling it to the fans really well. And I like that because they are giving us just enough transparency to give us hope, but they're not playing their hand. They're not showing their hand. Sorry, they're not showing their hand is the expression. I feel like with the Flyers, it seems like it's reacting, not methodical pre-planning. And that's the difference I would make. And so, when you hear the words like aggressive retool or retool on the fly, it always feels to me reactive. Canadians are like, you can call this whatever you want to call it, but what we want to do is we want to build a contender, right? So me looking at the Habs 2 years from if I was looking at it at the beginning of this season and I said, what are the Canadiens going to look like 2-3 years from now? All I saw was a pit of despair. But then things changed so quickly in such a short amount of time because of the decisions that we saw the team making. They were not afraid to do unpopular things like trade away, for example, Tyler Toffoli, a huge fan favorite in this market. They traded away Otto Leskinen, who a lot of fans didn't necessarily appreciate all that much, but is a super versatile player. Like he's one of those depth players that you win championships with. And the Colorado Avalanche are they're almost at that point with him, right? So they have made moves that they have made bold moves, and they haven't been afraid to do that. So for me, I think that's a really good thing. And the other thing that I'm finding really, really positive is that they don't make moves just for the sake of making them. And I feel like a lot of GMs do that. A lot of front offices will do that. I think what they do is they patiently wait until they get what they want. They did that with Marie-Philippe Poulin. They pitched her a while ago. She said she wasn't interested in ending her playing career just yet. They worked it out so that now she can do another Olympic cycle and learn management and also be part of the staff, right? But that's only one example, right? With Tyler Toffoli, they asked a high price. They got it. Ben Sherratt, they got a king's ransom for Ben Sherratt.
They really did.
They literally, and you look at Brett Kulak and Arturi Lehkonen, they were traded last minute on the trade deadline. So they did not make the move until they got what they wanted. Jeff Petrie was being shopped, or, he was available. It was widely known that he was available, but he didn't get traded. You'd think in a situation where the player says that they want a new market, and that's changed since that time. Like the offseason has kind of changed a lot for Jeff Petrie, but when you see that a guy's unhappy and he wants to leave, you'd think that the team that has him has less leverage, not more. And the Canadiens just haven't traded him because they didn't get what they wanted for him. So I feel very confident with their patience, with the fact that they're not reacting, that they're acting.
Yeah, I think...
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's a huge difference right there, is that if you look at the deals that Chuck Fletcher has made, some of them have been okay. I do think the Cam Atkinson, Jake Voracek trade 1-for-1 made a lot of sense for both teams. And I think what Cam Atkinson brings in a situation like this to the Flyers is really good. I just think that he is a little more reactionary, like you were saying. And I do think that he doesn't wait for the perfect deal. And he doesn't get the most for the assets when he trades. And when he trades for somebody, he gives up more than he should. And if you look at the Ristolainen deal, obviously that is the marquee example of him trading away too much for a player that wasn't going to give you that kind of value in return. And so, I think that especially after having a slow burn GM like Ron Hextall who says, I've got a plan, it's going to take a while, and then we trust him, and it doesn't, and he gets fired like before whatever his plan is comes to fruition. Like it or not, if you think it was, too slow or not, he got fired before whatever his plan was ostensibly was going to come to fruition. So we'll never know. We'll never know exactly if his vision was going to work. And then you bring in a guy like Chuck Fletcher, who has, in some respects, has to have been reactionary, but at the same time doesn't appear to at least have that overall vision and plan. And that's what's frustrating, I think, for Flyers fans, is that there's some people who are just frustrated with the whole thing because we never got anywhere and this team is always 2 or 3 years away, versus like maybe now we want a rebuild and they're not giving it to us, which is a really difficult place to be in, I think. Overall.
It's a tough spot.
And that's kind of where Montreal was, that Marc Bergevin seemed to kind of have a plan until he didn't, in that he just kind of tried to straddle both sides of the fence and never committed. And it delayed what probably should have happened a couple of years ago. And now Gorton and Hughes have to do that. Is that, like you said, having an actual plan of attack is the biggest thing here. Is if you go in, just trying to wing it and seeing how it goes, that's not, if you actually have to tear it down and start over, you have to have a plan in place. Because if you just kind of do it however, you're either not going to get the assets you need to rebuild, you're going to give up the wrong guys for not nearly enough, and you're just going to set yourself back in the end there. You might see some marginal success, but you got to go for it. If you don't go for it and actually commit to doing what you're going to do, you stay in this perpetual cycle of, we got better this year because someone had a career year or the goalie was really good, and then a down year when everything kind of goes back to normal and you don't know what happened. Just commit and go for it. And I'm kind of glad to see Hughes and Gorton are doing that as it stands right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Bergevin is he wanted to, not be capped out. Okay. And he finally did spend some money and the team did get somewhere. Although we know that it was like a magic carpet ride, and that, at least the Canadiens realized that that's what it was. And Gorton, you can see how the Rangers are. Gorton was very responsible for that. And because Hughes does want to sort of be like the face and let Gorton work in the back room, it's a good combo.
I absolutely agree with that, in that I find that the way that they carry themselves is different. The organization with Marc Bergevin, I truly don't remember. I remember being at the draft in Pittsburgh with his first pick, right? That turned out to be,
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. It was third overall. You did mention him just now.
Galchenyuk. Yeah.
Yes, him. And I just remember just the positivity surrounding the organization then. It was a new management. It was a new pick. It was, a new era. And then towards the end, it seemed very secretive and combative. He was very, very difficult with the media. He wasn't, it just, even the VP of communications was not well liked by the media, it turned out later. They just seemed to be this cabal more than anything else. And the way that they carry themselves now is just so different and so transparent. They're moving into a new era. They used to be a really conservative type of organization where even their social media was boring, and now you see the GM hop on Twitch. It's a lot of transparency that they're doing. It's a lot of appealing to fans that they're doing, but they're also not, it's not just for the sake of marketing and pleasing people, right? They have a strategy, they have a plan, they have ideas. So everything that we're getting at this point, I truly can't say a negative thing. And that's why, we're going to go back to the beginning of our conversation where we talked about whether or not they picked Shane Wright. They can't afford to tank this pick. They really can't. All of this goodwill will get, if whoever they pick turns out to not turn out to be a core piece that they can build a contender around, they might not have to be a superstar. If it's a
Louis LeBlanc pick, they're in trouble.
Exactly.
Well, so, and that's exactly what happened to the Flyers with Nolan Patrick, right?
Although I would say it was because of hard times for Patrick, not because he couldn't play, right? But it still happened.
Right, but it still happened. And there's a lot of 2020 hindsight that goes on with draft picks.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. But, at this point, maybe we have this conversation a year from now and we're singing a different tune. I don't know. But,
Well, a year from now, at least the Flyers will have a coach, presumably.
hopefully by the time that that the listeners get to listen to this episode, you will have a new coach, and it's Barry Trotz.
That would certainly be a thing.
Who would you prefer out of all the coaching candidates?
I mean, I think I have two minds on this issue, because I am very much in favor of thinking outside the box and getting creative and interviewing non-traditional candidates. And the Flyers are not that team. They just aren't. And so, like, trying to be in the head of what is realistic within the lane of who the Flyers are, I want Barry Trotz. And I think that he has the kind of discipline and system that could turn the Flyers around, because I think structure is something that the Flyers just desperately lacked for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I like Montgomery. I think Torts would be good for them. And I felt like it's Torts all along. I felt like Trotz is just sort of building up his price and just keeping in touch with the Flyers because he knows they'll pay, but isn't really going to come. And then like someone like Cassidy, I thought it was interesting how all of a sudden he's like off the list after they spoke to him. And that's probably because A, he's not 100% sure about what he wants to do, but also B, he probably looked over the lineup and said, yeah, this isn't my kind of team to coach. I think Cassidy's a pretty honest guy, and I think that's why. So, now Peter DeBoer apparently is in the final list. Is that because Dallas really wants him? I mean, the Flyers do tend to be reactionary, so it could be because maybe they want to see if they're overlooking something, and I think DeBoer is good. In the end, I still think it's Tortorella. I think after all of this, it doesn't matter, and it's Tortorella. What matters is they have to announce it soon, or I don't think you're allowed to announce it when the Cup starts. So I think they have until then, and if not, maybe you could do it on a Cup off day, but otherwise the league really frowns on, signing, having a big announcement during the Stanley Cup.
And so it's entirely possible that Barry Trotz waits until after the Cup final is over and doesn't make his decision, and then everybody else is just waiting, hanging in the balance.
Yep. And he doesn't care.
And why should he, honestly?
Yeah.
Live your best life, Barry Trotz.
If I were Barry Trotz, I'd do that. Imagine getting fired for being a good coach.
Yeah, and he's holding up a whole sport now, and all these other coaches. It's amazing.
That must be the life. And so I want to thank you guys for your time. I know, Russ, we pick your brain a lot on this show.
No, we thank you.
It.
Same.
Yeah,
it was fun.
This was fun, and I hope our listeners get a few fun segments out of these episodes. I think we've got enough now for like 2 to 3 episodes, so I'm very, very excited for our listeners to hear this.
Same.
So once again, we want to thank Russ and Rachel for hanging out with us, and I hope you all enjoyed that conversation about the rebuild like we did. Things are looking up in Montreal, and we're going to continue to cover all of that. Don't forget, as we said, we've got a couple of episodes on Cayden Primeau coming up. We still haven't talked to an OHL scout about all these other prospects in the OHL. We've got so much content coming up leading up to the draft and even beyond that. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube as well. You'll find us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. You'll find me on Twitter at The Active Stick. You'll find Scott at Scott Matla. Our friends can be found at Locked On Flyers. Russ is at Sportsology. Rachel's at R. Miriam. And once you're done listening to this, check out Locked On NHL, where they're covering the Stanley Cup final, and they've got all aspects of it. Make them your second listen of the day. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.